Today's lesson is going to be looking at types of cartilage. There are three main types of cartilage which are found attached to the human skeleton that you need to know about, and you should be able to understand what their role is and be able to distinguish them from each other. As ever, please ensure that you read the relevant pages in your textbook, as these contain more in-depth notes to help you understand this lesson. The learning objectives for today's lesson are to describe the structure of cartilage, referring to key elements which are chondrin, collagen fibres, chondroblasts, lacunae and chondrocytes. Now hopefully some of those words will sound familiar because they are very similar to what we looked at when we did the bone lesson. You also need to be able to compare elastic, hyaline and fibrocartilage in relation to their structure, function and location within the human body. As ever, we've got our keywords here, and I have mentioned these before. And the pages in your booklet that you need to be looking at are 9 and 10. Now, cartilage is, you'd say like it's a relative of bone. They have a lot in common, but they also have several differences, which is why some of these words will sound very similar, but they are unique to cartilage and we need to be able to differentiate between them. So let's look at cartilage. This is an light microscope image of cartilage, and we can see here that cartilage is a type of connective tissue again, because it has those collagen fibers embedded in a matrix, but this time instead of it being a mineral-based matrix, it's a protein carbohydrate complex which is called chondrin. So the matrix is chondrin, and that's that pale lilac-y purple stuff you see in the background here. And you have collagen fibers, chondrocytes, similar to osteocytes, but these ones are referring to cartilage, and they sit in their little space, the lacuna. Now, the collagen fibers that run throughout cartilage add flexibility to that cartilage structure. You can notice that at the cartilage at the ends of your nose and in your ears. The chondrin matrix provides that background stability and support for cartilage. Now, if we look at the basic structure of cartilage, we can see that we start off with chondroblasts. Now, chondroblasts, similar to osteoblasts, these are cells, precursor cells, that produce the cartilage matrix and eventually become surrounded by it. So the chondroblasts will eventually produce the matrix and the chondrocyte inside. Now, chondroblasts keep producing the matrix until you have cells that are isolated within that. And the space where the cells are isolated within are called lacuna. Now, the mature cartilage cells are no longer chondroblasts, they are known as chondrocytes. So in this cartoon image, we can see that quite clearly. And down here, we can see that background matrix, and we can see the chondrocyte sitting in the space or the lacuna. Now, the first type of cartilage we're going to be looking at is hyaline cartilage. Now, this cartilage is described as amorphous but firm. It's quite a firm matrix in the background here. Now, the collagen fibers are quite fine. So this text is describing it as imperceptible, so you can't really differentiate the individual fibers in the matrix. But what you can see are the chondrocytes in the lacunae. Okay, now the function of hyaline cartilage is for support, and it's quite resilient in its properties. Now, it resists any compressive stress, which means that you can't really squash it very easily. And the locations where it's found are the trachea. It forms the basis of the embryonic skeleton, covers the ends of the long bone, so that's our articular cartilage, and it forms the costal cartilage around the rib cage. and in the nose itself and the trachea, as I mentioned, and the larynx. So the costal cartilage, that makes sense, that terminology, because between the costal cartilage you have the intercostal muscles. So costal cartilage is at the front of the rib cage here and here. It's also found in the trachea, the larynx, the nose, and forms the embryonic skeleton. So please make sure that you note the key structures and the description about hyaline cartilage, and you know some examples of where it's located. The next type of cartilage we're going to look at, you can see, looks very different to hyaline cartilage. We have got fibrocartilage. Now, fibrocartilage is found at the pubic symphysis, so that's the joining piece of cartilage at the front of the pubic bone that joins the left and right pelvic bones. It's found at the knee, so the discs of the knee joint, and these intervertebral discs, so that's the cushioning in between the vertebrae. Now, if we look at this image here, you can see the matrix is similar to the first slide, but it's less firm than in hyaline cartilage. We have these really thick collagen fibers, which you can see quite easily in the matrix. But its function, the reason why we've got these thicker fibers is because this type of cartilage, fibrocartilage, will add tensile strength and the ability to absorb compressive shock. So if you think about when you're standing upright, then all the force is going down on your vertebrae, so you need to be able to absorb that shock. Similarly within the knees. So we can see here these chondrocytes, these little purple dots are the collagen cells, the mature ones, sitting in the lacunae, that's that space round about it, and again the individual collagen fibers in that matrix. The last type of cartilage we're going to be looking at is elastic cartilage. And now it is quite similar to hyaline cartilage, but it has considerably more elastic fibers in that matrix. So again, you can actually see these more clearly than you can in the hyaline cartilage. These elastic fibers are quite distinguishable. Again, we can see the chondrocytes, those are the mature cartilage cells sitting in that lacuna. Okay, so similar in each type, but it's that background matrix which is distinguishing. Now, this type of cartilage, because it's elastic, helps to maintain the shape of certain structures in the body. Really good example of that is the pinna, which is the outer ear that we see, and also the epiglottis found at the back of the throat, at the back of the pharynx, between the trachea and the esophagus. Okay, so now that we've talked about the differences, the different types of cartilage, let's have a look at the differences and similarities between bone and cartilage. So both of them have lots of matrix, that's that background material with cells scattered in them. Bone, on the other hand, is rigid and it's strong due to those inorganic salts, so that's the phosphate and the calcium in that matrix, whereas cartilage is firm but has a degree of flexibility, and this is due to the collagen fibers within that matrix. The matrix forms concentric rings in bone, but it does not do that in cartilage. The cells that we find within that matrix, we have osteoblasts for bone, which produce mature bone cells, which are osteocytes, whereas in cartilage, it's chondroblasts that produce mature chondrocytes. Now, in bone, we have lamellae or layers present, whereas in cartilage, we do not. But both of them have lacunae in which those mature chondrocytes or osteocytes sit in. Okay, so that's the end of this short lesson on types of cartilage. What I've done is I've left this image of them from your textbook of the different types of cartilage just to remind you about these differences. We can see the hyaline cartilage with those thin fibers are pretty imperceptible. With fibrocartilage, we can see those thick collagen fibers. And with elastic cartilage, we can see lots and lots of those thin but plentiful elastic fibres. Now, what I'd like you to do is to read the pages in your textbook again, complete booklet pages 9 and 10, and to finish off your consolidation, it's really important that you complete review questions 8.5 on pages 211 of your textbook.